sports flowing in their veins. Mackie and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
You know, he'll sit down, he'll shoot you straight, he'll talk with you, he'll work with you. Tim has really earned this opportunity, and you feel for a Denver Nuggets organization because that type of deal, like Woj said, is a deal that maybe only 2 or 3 ever get. And so Tim has to go do what's best for his family. He has to go take this opportunity. But, you know, ultimately what he built in Denver, it kind of mirrors what's going on in Minnesota. They have a bunch of young talent that if you put the right pieces around, and Minnesota's like, hey, this guy's already done this job. Let's go see if he can do it here.
Right. That's Dick Jefferson breaking it down right there for ESPN.
Why'd you go with that? Why'd you say
come on,
that?
man.
What do you mean?
I mean, Richard Jefferson's good, man.
Rick
He's
Jefferson right there. He's actually a really good
good.
analyst.
Didn't really care.
No,
right? Like
he
Paul
mailed
Pierce
it.
was
Man.
just like, I don't give
And
a
Tracy
crap.
McGrady's fine, but Tracy McGrady always looks like he's about to fall asleep. You know, there's not a whole lot of
Jefferson
energy.
actually cares about the job.
I had no idea
true.
Tracy McGrady was doing stuff.
Yeah, it's because he was half asleep the whole time.
Because he fell. Yeah, he's like, wake up, Tracy.
Crazy.
Your thoughts.
Are we going to celebrate the fact that Alex Rodriguez broke the news of the new Timberwolves president of basketball operations? Beach somewhere. Do you think Alex Rodriguez meant for the press release to be up on his computer when he posted that picture on Instagram?
Oh, no, it's a total accident. No, he totally didn't mean. Of course, yeah, that was hilarious. I mean, he can't help himself, which is just great. But here's my question. So he's still doing he's doing a Sunday night thing like the Manning Cast now.
Yeah, it's actually pretty
Michael
good.
Kay.
Yeah.
My question is this: does when he breaks or gives you scoops on Twitter, does Woj call him and say, "This is ESPN on ESPN crime. How could you do this to Woj?"
It's a good question. Well, so how do you think, and we'll get into what this means for the Timberwolves, and you know, The Athletic had a good piece just sort of outlining how this happened. What does this mean for the Wolves and expectations? This is all very, very new. It's new territory, but it's also something that they tried with Tom Thibodeau a few years ago too, and it kind of blew up in their faces. But I was so fascinated by the process by which this news broke. So A-Rod sends out that photo, and within an hour or two, everyone's screenshotting it and zooming in on what's on his laptop. Oh my God, is that a press release? You can it's kind of grainy, but you can read the headline. You know, Timberwolves set to name Tim Connelly president of basketball operations, and then within about an hour of that photo making the rounds, you had Woj, Shams, and a couple other insiders, and Johnny K, all fired off about the same tweet. And then The Athletic had, you know, a 1,000-word expose on how it all went down that fired immediately after that. So did the Wolves embargo this? Was this so the timeline is Connelly comes into Minnesota after days of discussions and an offer and sits down with Glenn Taylor in Mankato, and then they also brought in CEO Ethan Casson, Ryan Tankey, the COO, and I think Marc Lore might have been there too. And so they hang out on Saturday, probably eat some potato salad, some lasagna, whatever it is. And then he sits on this throughout the weekend. And then the news comes out very systematically on Monday. I don't know. As a former reporter, Judd, I'm fascinated with how this news broke yesterday.
Well, I think, first of all, I think that there was probably, I think the Glenn Taylor, and this is just a total guess, but I think the Glenn Taylor part was the deal was basically done at that point in time. But Glenn still owns the team, or at least the majority stake in the team. So it had to at least go through him. My guess is to a certain point,
they had to weekend at Bernie's and grab his hand and sign a contract.
Basically, yeah. And Tim Connelly, who's been in this league now for a long time, probably had some questions about the sale itself. He's getting a stake in the team, and to call a spade right now, A-Rod and Lore own 20%. They hopefully by December of 2023 will own a majority stake because they're going to buy another 20% this year, and then I think the last piece is 40%. So they will eventually own 80%. But if you're Conley, you probably have questions about Glenn to make sure that this is all going down as planned, right?
Well, you probably have a lot of questions about Glenn, period.
Right, but I'm just saying, if Glenn says at the table, he pushes away his coffee and pie and says, "Let me tell you something, Tim." And Tim's like, "Yeah, what, Glenn?" And he says, I'm having second thoughts about selling because I really like this team. You might be like, dude, I'm going back to Denver. So I think that plays a role. But I think the reporting part, my guess is Lori headmanned the actual, here's what we're planning, don't burn us. And A-Rod came in with the, I'm going to show the cute tweet. So that's my guess. I think Marc, as far as I can tell, I might be totally wrong here, but this is just my sense. I think we're dealing with, and this is not a bad thing, this is just to be very clear, not a criticism. I think we're dealing with a Mark Cuban type here.
Yes.
I think he enjoys
100%.
it. I think he enjoys the game.
It's great.
I think, and
it's
so,
exactly what we've wanted for 20 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a I don't want to be too mean to Glenn because I feel like I've been really mean to him for 10 years. And I feel like he has been one of the worst owners in professional sports history since I was born.
Yep.
But we've just wanted someone that's and it's weird because he's engaged. He sits courtside in those little sweaters and stuff, but he's just so aloof and oblivious.
It's
and he's
a
not a shark. Yes.
But to peel back and not criticize Glenn, but to call it like it is. He runs the Timberwolves like they are the local grocery store owned by a family down the street.
Dude, at one point,
and that's not how things work.
Wasn't the team president at one point, 10, 15 years ago, also running his personal finances
his son-in-law,
and stuff?
Rob Moore, was the president. But I mean, he has run. He goes to games like he is, hi, Mr. Taylor from down the street. How's the store going? Well, it's going pretty well, and I really enjoy this game. But you know what?
He's Mr. Rogers, man. He's Mr. Rogers. Yeah.
But I mean, we now are seeing, and I don't know if it's going to work. And I'm going to tell you right now. Get your head around this. The end game is a building, a new one, which, by the way, I think this team needs. But so, it's not always going to be peaches and cream with everyone, but this team is now going to be run like a team is run, for the most part, or should be, in 2022.
Well, this is this is an amazing hire. Let's just say it. This is, and it's, they had to pay Timberwolves tax. We talked about the Timberwolves tax last week we kind of threw out Pat Riley, and when Doogie reported, and he's been floating this for months and months. Credit to him. And you guys did a scoop session. You can find that on the Mackey and Judd podcast feed and also Score North YouTube channel. Yep. He's been talking about behind the scenes. They've been sniffing around big game hunting for top pobos for a long time here, and we kind of threw out Pat Riley, Masai Ujiri. They literally made overtures to all of those guys. And I'm sure people around the league laugh at it, right? Who the hell? The Timberwolves reaching out to Pat Riley?
Yep.
They can't think that. They can't associate 30 years of Timberwolves failure and, being a laughingstock with what they want to do in the future. And they aren't. And I love it. Marc Lore and Alex Rodriguez have known nothing but professional success. Now, A-Rod had a couple black eyes with the steroid things, but Alex Rodriguez as a baseball player, cheating or not, was one of the best of all time. And Marc Lore as a businessman is one of the best. He's not quite like Elon Musk, but he has built and sold companies for billions of dollars. Amazon, Walmart. They aren't associating what they are trying to do with 30 years of Timberwolves failure. And this hire illustrates that. They had to double Tim Connelly's salary from what he was making in Denver to make this happen. So there still is a Timberwolves tax. But they did it. Credit to Glenn Taylor for not, imploding this at the last minute or getting cold feet. He is trusting these guys as if they are running the organization, which they basically are.
Which was the question when this sale was first broke, I think surprisingly, which was a week ago this year. I think we all said this. We all said, okay, cool. But then we found out that it was going to be a gradual sale, right? So our question was, well, are these guys going to be allowed to make changes? Are they going to be allowed to move? Because 2023 is a long time. And clearly now we know the answer is no. They can move on things, which is the most important
thing. This is the biggest thing that you would move on.
And that's the most important thing that Glenn is allowing them to do. And it's absolutely huge. Now, I will say this, and this is so to me, this came from Dukes on the bonus scoop today, which you can find. But this is one of the most interesting things, Phil, about this entire thing to me. And this perfectly illustrates Glenn's Wolves and A-Rod and Lore's Wolves, okay? Tim Connelly, one of the best, most respected, and powerful executives in the league. His contract was nearing an end, but was not there yet. And that contract had no clause. I don't know how. It makes no sense. But there was no clause in Connelly's contract saying that a team had to get permission to talk to him. Mm-hmm. So anyone could have approached him. The Wolves' new brass said, perfect. Went and talked to him. Basically made an offer that, to your point, yes, had a Timberwolves tax, but basically a poison pill too. Because Denver was not going to say, take a 1% stake in our team, Tim.
The Cronkies are it's a longtime family.
And the Cronkies, by the way, despicable. Like I have no patience for the Cronkies.
Despicable.
But here's the thing. Doogie informed us. Guess who said, well, guys, we got to call the Cronkies and tell them. Glenn Taylor did. Yeah. And that's the difference.
He's got to make that. Hey guys, we're both.
But I love, and this could come back to bite fans. I don't know where this is going eventually, but I love the shark mentality here, which is, you know what? Hell no, we're gonna do our thing. Now that can play both ways, especially as things gradually move towards difficult conversations that PJ Fleck likes to eat for breakfast, but. But the fact is, there is going to be a shark mentality. There is going to be a mentality that's going to be corporate, that's probably going to cost a lot more people that are familiar names in this town with that team their jobs. It's unfortunate in some ways, but I'm going to tell you right now, it's necessary to get this franchise where this franchise can potentially go, because we have seen enough garbage.
You know, here's another thing too, and then let's get into the actual sort of, okay, what does this mean for the team and the wins and losses going forward? Because this is great for all of those things, and we'll get to it in a second here. But you know, from a business standpoint, on the surface, you might say, "Holy crap! What is it? Is it 5 years, $40 million?" Right? So it's going to be $8 million a year
with 1% at least equity in the team.
And that's around. I think that's around. Tom Thibodeau was between like $6 and $8 million somewhere to run everything. I mean, he was doing two jobs. I think it was $8 million a year to be the coach and Pobo.
Yep.
And that at the time it was very exciting because, oh my God, they made a big. This is a big investment. This is exactly the type of swing you should make. And
search firm told Glenda that Tom was available.
But this is, you might say, holy crap, for a president of basketball operations, they're making him essentially the highest paid, or one of the 2 or 3 highest paid executives in the NBA. $40 million over 5 years, and a slice, probably a small slice of ownership. Mm-hmm. Is it worth it? So I just pulled up the Forbes list of most valuable NBA franchises. The Timberwolves are 28th right now. This is for the 2021-22 season. So the list for next season hasn't come out yet.
Correct.
And the franchise is valued at $1.5 billion. Mm-hmm. A few of the teams above the Timberwolves on this list. So forget about like the Knicks and the Lakers. That is pie in the sky. Let's look at some other Western Conference, Eastern Conference, Midwest, or
the Bucks.
Middle sort of market teams. Yeah. The Bucks are 17th on this list. Their franchise is worth $1.9 billion. The Phoenix Suns down in the desert. It's a nice organization. They're not in a huge market. It's Phoenix, $1.8 billion. Nuggets, 1.7. Jazz, 1.75. So if you can just win, not even at a championship, so take the Bucks out. If you can just win at the level that the Nuggets, Jazz, and Suns have been winning at, which is good teams, 50-plus wins for a pretty long stretch, you're winning a playoff series or two, you can increase the value of your franchise by almost $500 million. And if for $8 million a year, Tim Connelly can help put together those rosters and that strategy, it is a drop in the bucket for what this franchise could be worth in 5 years from now, if all goes the way that it has gone for Denver in the last 5 years.
And the difference between, so where this differs from the Wolves' previous attempts and largely swings and misses on Pobos and GMs, is this one too. Connelly comes with a reputation that's great and a resume that's impressive. Because think about this. Tibbs, okay, I will admit fully, I was excited. I thought, oh my God, it took a search firm. It shouldn't have done that. But what did Tibbs have? Tibbs had coaching cred, but he had no Pobo cred, and he was a
Yes.
mess there. Like he was a total. He didn't know how to run people. It was too much. It didn't work, right? I mean, Flip was tragic because he passed. But I mean, you go back through this list, and this is really the first time Gerson looked to be promising, but he was a 2 who came up and then got promoted. So this is the first time that the Wolves have said, you know what, screw it, we're going to go get the best executive that we possibly can.
Love it.
I
love it.
I think ever, right? I don't think they've ever made a move where they poached an executive with this credibility, who, by the way, is making a parallel move.
I'll
So
actually give you a list of.
GM.
I've got a list for later in the show here of the best Wolves brain trust coach combos in franchise history. I think I've got that list right. It's not a very impressive list, but yeah, I mean, having expectations for the Timberwolves feels weird, but we have to now. It's, last year was kind of, all right, finally things sort of lived up to close to what people were expecting and thinking, and you got this young nucleus, but it's always felt like a little fragile. How could it not? 30 years and 2 playoff series victories? They've only had one season in 30 plus years where they have, I think it's been 33 years now, one season in which they've won a playoff series before. So even when they have some success, it always feels like you're looking around, your head's on a swivel. Okay, what's going to happen? When you start to piece together what they have now, they have one of the top and most respected executives in the entire league, Tim Connelly, running the show. The proof in his abilities to run a franchise is staring at you from your own conference, the Denver Nuggets, right?
Yep.
You have a very good, respected coach that received a small handful of Coach of the Year votes, not first place votes. I still take issue with that. In Chris Finch. You have one of the fastest rising star wing players in the NBA that put on a show in the playoffs in Anthony Edwards. And even though some of his playoff performances were despicable and his maturity is questionable at best, Karl Anthony Towns is a unicorn big man who's still in his mid-20s, in his prime. And you have all kinds of interesting complementary pieces. Jaden McDaniels is only going to get better from here. Jared Vanderbilt is probably only going to get better from here. And there's other pieces too. So it's like you start to look at what they have, and if you can just get rid of the angst feeling of Timberwolves history, this is a very, very interesting spot for this franchise to be in here. And I just love that they found this guy at this time to run the whole thing and piece it all together.
It feels like, too, that Conley comes here with one of the most important things, because if you think back, the inconsistency and one of the problems and the downfall of this franchise was drafting, right? Like it was, and you know, Cat was a great pick, but it's a top pick. Ant, same thing. I'm talking about the nuance of drafting. I'm talking about second round picks and actually getting them. I mean, how long have we said, well, the Spurs did or Denver did? So just from a simple standpoint of, and it sounds stupid, but a guy who has a track record of very competent, good, and yes, he's going to miss at times, but good drafting to build teams, to then make trades. So like there are a number of unexplored small things that probably added up to the Wolves' complete downfall that can be rectified. Not promising that they will be, but I like their chances now.
Yeah, to your point about Denver's drafting, and we can do more of a dive into this too, because there's definitely more meat on this bone, but the highest pick they've had, so Connelly, I think 2014 was the first draft he was a part of in Denver. That was the Nikola Jokic draft. They found him in the second round. And since then, and he's been running the whole thing since 2017. I think the 2018 draft was the first where he was the actual Pobo. The highest draft pick they've had is the 7th overall pick. And more often than not, they're picking mid to late first round, and they're still finding guys. I mean, they find Jamal Murray with the 7th pick in a draft in which, didn't the Timberwolves take Chris Dunn in the 2016 first round?
Yeah, Tibbs did. Yeah, because you can play defense. Defense.
22.
And Denver gets a snipe shooting combo guard in Jamal Murray. They find Michael Porter with the 14th pick. Bones Highland was a great rotation player for them out of VCU this year with the 26th pick.
And a great name.
Michael Porter, 14th. And even in 2017, Monte Morris from Iowa State has become just a really good 25, 30 minutes per game rotational guy who can shoot threes in the second round with a 51st pick. So hopefully the Wolves aren't picking higher than 7th very often, but Connelly has a track record of being able to find guys mid-first round, second round, and build a franchise that way. So what a hire. Freaking A, man. I love this.
I just like the fact that they are turning this into a franchise that is going to be run at least in a modern day way. Because this is not a rip of Glenn, but it was run as a ma and pa shop, and eventually, and that had a run where it was okay, but unfortunately, that came to an end. But the mentality really sort of didn't.
Yeah.
And so I think the mentality of the entire franchise is being changed, business-wise, basketball-wise, everything. And that becomes incredibly, incredibly important. And this, to me, I like the fact that this has a feel of we are going to go get our guy. And again, I will say, for those who come back and fairly say, well, they hired Tibbs and you guys were excited. The difference there is Tibbs was an unknown as a Pobo. This guy's not.
Yes, and I think at the time Tibbs was one of only maybe 3 guys in the entire league that was both the Pobo and the coach. Those are both burnout jobs individually, and he was doing both. Now Tibbs doesn't have a family or a wife. So he had more time to pour into
basketball.
Yeah, he's got Murray's and he's got the Skyway and he's got his office.
Potato.
So having 2 guys at the top of their game focusing on those jobs individually is better than having one guy just burnt out all the time yelling at people.
And Chris Finch seems stable, which unfortunately, as we quickly learned about Tibbs, he was not.
Yeah. I do have one more thing for you guys here on this in terms of, is this the best brain trust that we've seen in Timberwolves history? And I'm trying to piece together a list here. But a shout out to our friends at Chill Boys. So the most comfortable underwear that we've ever worn, Chill Boys. And I'm telling you, the long underwear on cool mornings, it's summertime, but it's
cool here.
Chill Boys are great for all seasons, really, with that bamboo fabric.
No.
And you can find them online. They're a Minnesota-based company at chillboys.com, and you can tell them Score North or Purple Daily, if you consume that show as well, sent you there. Also, a shout out to our friends at Dennis Kirk and DennisKirk.com. So if you like to ride and get out on the open road with the wind blowing through your hair, doesn't matter what you ride, whether it's a Harley, a metric cruiser, a sport bike, Dennis Kirk has you covered with 160,000 parts and accessories in stock, same-day shipping on orders placed before 8 p.m., and free shipping on orders over $89. Ride more, wait less at DennisKirk.com. So I think this is the best combination of Pobo or GM and coach in Timberwolves history. And this is all due respect to Kevin McHale and Flip Saunders were a great pairing for a long time.
Yeah, they were.
But Kevin McHale made some bad mistakes. I would argue that Flip Saunders was great at his job. And Kevin McHale was great finding Kevin Garnett and then later on finding Kevin Love to sort of bookend his tenure. But the time between that was just filled with bumbling mistakes and signing Joe Smith under the table and whiffing on first-round picks and not finding a sidekick for KG. And so, Connelly has a better track record than Kevin McHale does already, to me. Because he doesn't have the bumbling mistakes.
His resume is very impressive. There's no question.
And then Flip Saunders, I think, it's going to take Finch a while to get to the Flip Saunders level where he's just a perennial playoff coach.
Right.
But that's kind of, Kevin McHale and Flip Saunders are kind of the gold standard, which is mostly held up by Flip. Then you have Tom Thibodeau and Scott Layden. Had one good year, right? A playoff year.
Scott Layden.
Scott Layden.
Black coffee.
You had the 1 year run Flip Saunders and Rick Adelman that brought the Timberwolves close to the playoffs, but couldn't quite pay it off.
Yeah, and Rick in his heyday was really good. I think by that point, there was a lot going on that outside of basketball that probably distracted Rick.
Yeah. David Kahn and Kurt Rambis just missed my list here. Missed my Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, that's my point is if you look back, it's basically McHale and Flip and nothing else. And as we'll discuss, Kevin McHale in the 90s did some really good things. And then we got to the 2000s and 2005, and he did some really bad things.
Well, people give him credit for Marbury too, and you know how I feel about that.
And
he
that's
was
the
wrong
90s,
about
though.
He was wrong about that too, though.
Well,
they drafted Ray Allen and traded him. Ray Allen was the guy, and then they wound up with Marbury.
I've told you this because of positions at that time. I still like that trade at the time. But in the 2000s,
Wrong.
there's no debating.
Wrong.
No, in 2005, I don't
Wrong.
want to debate Marbury. You were
How
how
is it? It's
11?
not even a debate. Like, how is it a debate?
Because the point guard position and what Marbury was going to bring to that team was seen as imperatively important at the time.
But
Now
was
you-
it? All
now
the
you
NBA
would be-
champions in the 80s and 90s were wing players. I mean, you want to call Magic
They
Johnson,
wanted-
but Magic
they-
Johnson was like a
they-
6'9" point guard.
They wanted John Stockton and the mailman, and they thought that those two would give them that.
That was
and
wrong.
Marbury, and they hadn't had a point guard like Stefan in their entire history at that time. So, but anyway,
Nor had they had a
2005
shooting guard
on,
like Ray Allen in their entire
well, I mean,
history.
you're arguing it from like 30 years after.
That's because you're like digging in.
Because the Marbury trade, go back and ask anybody at the time. We all loved
Yeah, those
that
people were
trade.
wrong.
We all love that trade.
Wrong.
Yeah, we're wrong in 2020. Anyway.
Wrong.
Anyway. You two punks. Anyway, McHale, later on, there's no denying that this is one of the more impressive executive hires in recent Minnesota sports history as far as the resume the person brings to the job.
What's the percent chance, much like we did, we literally celebrated Tom Thibodeau. He came on our show a couple times. We got that goofy picture of Mackie and Judd with Tom Thibodeau in the Skyway, all of us
that's
smiling.
Uncomfortable.
You know, what are the chances that in 2 years or 3 years from now, we're doing the same thing we did with Thibodeau, which is get this clown out of here, this buffoon. What a terrible hire.
If this was Glenn,
It's pretty low.
If this was Taylor's guy, I'd be very concerned that it would blow up. But because it's not, I think it's going to be okay.
Okay.
I think it's going to be
think you're right.
okay. But that's
Dex,
my
what do you
guess.
think? Are you going to be clipping an old takes or old tweets exposed from us in a few years?
Probably. I'll be
You
ready
think
to clip
so?
this. Yeah. No. I love the Connelly hiring. I think it's a good hire. Look, the Denver Nuggets have built a really damn good roster over the last 5 years. And I know, look, Golden State has mostly still had that threshold and they now look like they're going to win another NBA title. But Phoenix has been able to pop up. Denver's been able to pop up. Portland went to the Western Conference Finals not too long ago. Like, there's no reason the Wolves can't also be one of those teams. And Connelly played a big factor in getting Denver to be one of those good teams. And I think the Wolves can do it too.
Yep. Totally agree.
I think
Totally
the thing too is this, just from a starting point, this team still needs credibility. And this guy brings it to him.
Yeah, to what
Just
extent?
credibility.
That's my last question for just, and we there's so many other things we can talk about. We can pick this conversation up the rest of the week too, but to what extent, compared to, let's say, a year ago or 2 years ago, have the Wolves gained credibility and respect around the league? They have a lot of work to do still, but beating the Clippers in the play-in game, the way that they lost to Memphis was kind of embarrassing because they set a record for most blown double-digit fourth quarter leads, but they did go 6 games against a really good Memphis team, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And then they steal away one of the best executives in the NBA from a respected franchise. Like, so if they were on a 1 to 10 scale of embarrassment, if they were like a 10 embarrassed level,
Right.
what are they now? Are they like a 5? I think
Probably.
they're trending closer to respectable now.
And beyond their successes, look at this. You've got Ant. And I think Ant brings you more credibility than Carl as far as like outwork. Like, I think players gravitate. I don't know that
Yeah,
players,
people do think Cat's kind of a
he's soft. But I think think that there is a perception of Ant that's incredibly positive. I think Chris Finch brings stability that's respected that they didn't have. I mean, Tibbs unfortunately turned out to be a circus. So I think that there is now and Laurie, what he brings, like, let's just juxtapose this one. Glenn Taylor on the Wolves side, right, by the Wolves bench in a sweater, and a guy who's kicking off his shoes, which no matter what you think is going to be perceived as cool by people who are important. And he's into the game and he's up cheering, right? A-Rod, in my opinion, is a buffoon to a certain point, but I think that he's still respected because he's a shark himself. So yeah, I think that there is a credibility factor just from the people involved right now that was lacking. And I mean, I'm sorry, but you look at Glenn, God bless him, and he's there in a sweater with Becky, and
he's not cool. He's
it's
just,
a
let's just say
Mon Pa thing.
he's not cool. He's just kind of he's a bad
cool
owner
enough.
and he's not cool.
It's a Mon Pa thing.
Let's make the Timberwolves cool again. That's what we're trying to do here.
Actually, for the first time in how long? Flip probably had him. Flip at one point was cool.
They were really cool in 2003-4.
Yep.
And then they were kind of cool in 2017. They've mostly just been sitting at their own lunch table.
And that's where
while the
Jimmy.
cool
I
kids
think that's where
make fun of
Jimmy
them.
like couldn't take it. He's like, "You guys aren't cool at all. I'm so cool. I'm Jimmy Butler."
That's what he always thinks. I'm so cool. All right. Let us know what you think too in the YouTube comment section of this episode, or hit us up too. What's your level of Wolves excitement now that Tim Connelly is running the organization?